Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Welcome, devoted friends and family. Thank you for coming here tonight. This is the first time that I am presenting the Brian O'Brien scrapbook. And it's been a decade since we all met together at Brian's funeral on February 21st, 2004. But tonight, we're going to remember a great man. And I would like to start with some of my stories about Brian O'Brien. First of all, I bet you didn't know that Brian O'Brien was a fashion plate. He loved designer clothes and designer fragrances. As a matter of fact, he wore his Gucci loafers till they wore out, and he never wore socks. And then his favorite fragrance, can you imagine? It was a layering of that fine cologne called Fruit and Old Spice. It was something to remember. I bet you didn't know that Brian O'Brien was an actor. Yes, indeed he was. One night, on a St. Patty's Day night, he got in a fight with his Italian friend, and Brian O'Brien was, of course, Irish. They got into a fight. They pulled Brian's hands behind his back, and all of a sudden, Al sucker punched him. The manager came out and said, "You two are banished from Bella's for a month." So Brian told me the story, and I helped him retaliate. We went to a place called Yesterday's, where they had all kinds of different types of clothing. And we found a Muhammad Ali boxing outfit. And I dressed Brian up in that boxing outfit, and I went into Bella's first and watched what happened. Al was sitting on the chair having a drink. Brian comes in dressed like Muhammad Ali. "I'm going to kick him in. I'm the greatest. Look like a butterfly, sting like the hands can't hit what the eyes can't see." Al looks over, stares at Brian, and says to Larry the bartender, "You better make that a double." I bet you didn't know Brian was a twin. He said, "That's not true, Janet. His father was a twin." I know his father was a twin, but Brian was a twin. Don't we all have twins out there? I've had many a time when someone said to me, "Janet, I saw you at Publix last night," and that was not me. But sure enough, I have a twin. I met Brian's twin, and his name is Dave. Now, they could tell some stories, and they did look alike. Many times they were at a bar, and some unbeknown girl would come up, for example, to Brian. Brian'd be standing there. The girl would grab him behind the back, start holding him, and kiss him on the neck. After you turn around and say, "What's your name, honey?" "Oh my God, you're not Dave." "No, I'm Brian." But they had this pact, these two, Dave and Brian, that they would not ever put the other person in jail. That they would protect their image. Now Dave, I ran into Dave a year after Brian died at Burns. And I said to him, "Aren't you Brian's twin?" He said, "Yes, Janet, I am, and I'm so sorry about Brian. I couldn't be at the funeral because I've been in Argentina for the last year." Now, I bet you do know that Brian O'Brien was a backseat driver. Now, one time I was driving Brian, his good friend Steve Azzarelli, and Damaris Cannon to watch my father preach. Now, I have a certain way I drive, kind of like an old lady, but I put my foot on the gas a little bit and then bring it back up, so everybody in the car goes forward and then back, and it gets really nauseating. Back and forth. I don't know how to stop it, but it just keeps going. So finally Steve Azzarelli said, "Brian, does Janet always drive like this?" He said, "No, worse." We all have a lot of fun stories about Brian O'Brien, but before we get into the scrapbooks tonight, I want each and every one of you to go and have a cold drink and enjoy some of this delicious food, and we will reconvene and we will show for the first time ever my homemade scrapbook of the wonderful Brian O'Brien. Mr. Toastmaster.